even in his last breath, he was trying to otherize black people and say, oh, well, I mean, if you want to talk about gang violence as mass shooters, and there are conversations to be had about gang violence, but that conversation needs to include why gang violence happens in the first place. And no, it's not because they're black. A lot's happened, man. The past 2 weeks have been quite insane. I mean, gun violence has escalated to the point of political assassinations. Free speech is under attack on multiple different fronts. I mean, it has been, but now it's like direct attacks on free speech. Israel is doubling down on, invading Gaza. We've got, ICE is just, they're killing more people. And somehow, people that were in Alligator Alcatraz, after they were forced to shut it down, have disappeared. The madness in the wake of Charlie Kirk's untimely his assassination, the insanity that has unfolded, it has been causing me, like, I'm gonna have gray hairs before I hit 30 because of this a lot to get into, mainly regarding the information on Charlie Kirk's assassination. I want to talk about who he was as a person. I would like to start this. It's going to be a bit of a monologue. I think my brain has just been cooking inside my head for the past 2 weeks since the last time I streamed. So I'm going to do my best to keep this as coherent as possible. YouTube, God bless you. You're getting the edited version. So strap in. I might be talking for a couple hours straight. But yeah, I just wanted to, again, touch on the actual assassination. And maybe just even like my personal experience on that. I want to get into who Charlie Kirk was as a person. And then I want to also get into the aftermath and how his death was used as a political tool, because it has escalated the attacks on free speech. It has escalated it has raised the temperature on violence in this country, especially towards marginalized groups. And so I just want to kind of provide a full picture of what the last 2 weeks has really looked like. So let's start here. So, on September 10th, 2025, this was almost 2 weeks ago on Wednesday, Charlie Kirk I believe this was the first stop on his American Comeback Tour, which is just his tour around different colleges around the U.S. He just goes and he debates with people. Yeah, it was of course, it was a complete surprise. It just came out of nowhere. He was literally in the middle of a debate, and I'll just kind of give my perspective on the events. I was at work. I was on the way to a move. I work at a moving company, and I was on the way to a move. So we were just driving. It was like a 35-minute drive. We were just chilling in the truck, whatever. And so we're just sitting there yapping, whatever. And then I just like happened to look over, right? There's three of us in the truck. I'm sitting in the middle. And so I look to my right, to my coworkers. I just like glanced. He was on like TikTok. He was scrolling TikTok. And I just like glanced down. And right as he scrolled and I glanced down, it was just the raw footage of what had just happened, which, I'm sure almost everyone's seen it by now. And it's very graphic. It's horrifying. Just further evidence of an epidemic of violence, both in our country and in our world, but especially in our country with gun violence. And it was shocking. It was surreal. I had trouble even grasping what I had just seen. And of course, this was just him being shot. It wasn't confirmed that he was dead yet. I kind of assumed, based on the footage, it didn't look good, obviously. Again, if you've seen the footage, you know what it looks like. I'm not going to subject anyone to that. If you haven't seen it, I would not suggest looking for it. It is very graphic. However, it's probably out there. But nonetheless, it was very... It was almost an out-of-body experience. It wasn't quite an out-of-body experience, but I was kind of just... It felt like I didn't exist for a few minutes as I thought about, Charlie Kirk is somebody that I've seen for years, and I'll just be completely honest. I had already moved to the left at that point in time when I even found out who he was. Just for some context, that was probably in 2021 or 2022 when I started kind of leaning into more leftist politics. And so, hearing some of the things that he had to say specifically about black people, about gay people, about immigrants, and even some of the things he had to say about gun violence, I didn't agree with. I didn't like the things he had to say, and I didn't know how sincere he was in the things he was saying. I didn't know if he was just saying it for clicks, or if he truly believed these things, if he was ignorant, or if he was a white supremacist. I didn't know. But it became evidently clear to me over years of seeing his rhetoric evolve from, a white libertarian who just doesn't know that much about, why certain groups of people do certain things. It's not anything to do with the color of their skin, but rather their material conditions that have been placed upon them. I saw that evolve into a very entrenched stance on what is white supremacy, whether it was saying it out loud or not, which there are a few instances of him saying it out loud, and there are a few clips that I do want to go through. He just evolved into someone who spread genuine hatred for marginalized communities, especially black people and gay people, and queer people in general, I would say. And so with all that knowledge, and for even further context, any Hasanabi heads in chat or on YouTube, shouts out. I was looking forward to Hassan Piker's upcoming debate, which would have happened on the 15th. It would have happened this last week. I was looking forward to that debate. So that was kind of where I was at with Charlie Kirk. I'm like, okay, I disagree with Charlie Kirk on pretty much everything, and even his stance as an evangelical. I don't think that he embodies the teachings of Christ. And I was looking forward to someone that I agreed with on 99.9% of issues, Hassan Piker, debate him, because I wanted to engage with the conversations that they had and maybe expand on some of those ideas and help even, change my worldview and how to combat white supremacy, because again, I saw Charlie Kirk evolve into a white supremacist. Whether he was knowingly, that's what he thought, was like that white people are just better, or he was just ignorantly sleepwalking into that ideology. I think it's the former, but giving some benefit of the doubt as much as I can, that was where my head was at until I saw that video. And in that moment, I was, again, just kind of suspended. It was like I was just floating in midair. I didn't feel real for a couple minutes. And my coworkers were reacting too. They're like, dude, this is insane. This is somebody that a lot of people, this is a large figure. And not to diminish violence that takes place elsewhere to other people. And that's something that I also want to talk about regarding some of the rhetoric following Charlie Kirk's death. It was crazy. I've never seen. I think this is the highest profile person that I have seen. Not only just die young, but he was assassinated. He was targeted. It's not like this was somebody in the crowd just started shooting, indiscriminately. No, this was somebody that took one single shot and assassinated Charlie Kirk. That was insane. I've never seen something like that in my life. Of course, I've seen videos in retrospect to some events like that, but nothing live, nothing right in front of my face, nothing relevant to what I engage in on a daily basis, politically. It was surreal. And the rest of the day was just, the rest of the day was kind of crazy. It was just trying to find out more on what happened, and then, they came out and announced that he had died. And it did make me sad. It made me really sad, because while I didn't like Charlie Kirk as a person, and while I didn't agree with any of his beliefs, no one deserves to die in this manner, okay? A human life always deserves the dignity in death. And of course, we can talk about I can hear cynical actors in my head so you think Hitler deserved, no. And I'm not comparing Charlie Kirk to Hitler directly. I think that, he's got the same genre of ideology, but he didn't actively kill 6 million people. So this is not that. Charlie Kirk was a citizen. Charlie Kirk was someone who expressed his ideals. And while those ideals may have hurt people, I do not think that he deserved to be assassinated. With that being said, I also cannot feel any empathy for Charlie Kirk, because he was someone that has actively engendered hatred towards minorities, especially black people, diminishing them, diminishing their mental prowess, diminishing their achievements due to affirmative action and whatnot. At the most base level, his stance on gun violence, which is that in order to keep the Second Amendment around, it is okay to have a couple gun deaths every year.
Now, we must also be real. We must be honest with the population. Having an armed citizenry comes with a price. Wow. And that is part of liberty. Wow. Driving comes with a price. 50,000 people die on the road every year. Wow. That's a price. You get rid of driving, you'd have 50,000 less auto fatalities. But we have decided that the benefit of driving, speed, accessibility, mobility, having products, services, is worth the cost of 50,000 people dying on the road. Wow. So we need to be very clear that you're not going to get gun deaths to zero. It will not happen. Right. You can significantly reduce them through having more fathers in the home,
Yes.
by having more armed guards in front of schools. You will never live in a society when you have an armed citizenry and you won't have a single gun death. That is nonsense. It's drivel. But I think it's worth it. I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. That is a prudent deal. It is rational.
Which it's more than a couple. It's tens of thousands every year. But that was his stance. And if that's his stance, I cannot feel empathy for him in that moment, specifically him. Do I want anyone to die in this way? No, I want to end gun violence in America. I want to end gun violence everywhere. I want to end violence everywhere. I'm anti-violence. I don't like violence. But I there's no empathy in my heart for Charlie Kirk being dead now. And that may sound callous, and I can understand how that may sound callous, but again, there's no empathy for someone who spreads that much hatred. And especially having seen a lot of it live, a lot of it happen in real time. There's no room within my own worldview to be saddened. Not because of what happened. I am sad by what happened, but I don't miss him. But enough on my own feelings. The ensuing rhetoric surrounding his death, and I guess the biggest shock to me was the amount of people that did sympathize with him and that did view him in a positive light. Not knowing or being aware of him being a white supremacist, or not thinking that he was, even having heard the things he said. It was surprising and disappointing in a lot of instances. And I think ignorance can attest for some of that, but some of that ignorance is willful, and I think that there's also a level of internalized white supremacy, even by people who aren't white, and that is possible. That's something that I'm willing to dive into a bit, but there was a lack of good faith. There was a lack of willingness to engage with the statements that Charlie made in his own advocacy, going all the way up to the president. And that's I'm going to get into that, but Donald Trump explicitly, and people in his own administration as well, explicitly called for people to be fired over their comments, not celebrating his death, but being honest about how they felt about Charlie as a person. Now, people on the right will say, oh, it's that you were celebrating his death, that you deserve to be fired for celebrating Charlie Kirk's death, which I'm not condoning. I'm not celebrating his death. And a majority of the people that I've engaged with on the left in the past 2 weeks have not been celebrating his death. They're not like, yeah, I'm glad he's dead. Have there been some people saying that online? Sure. I've seen it here and there, and I've seen some videos of people expressing that sentiment. I can't speak for those people. And also, especially for black people and black women, especially black women, Charlie was racist and misogynistic. So especially black women, I'm not going to speak on how they feel about Charlie Kirk being dead. I want to speak on how I feel, and I want to speak on how his legacy was harmful. That's what I'm going to do. But, again, a lot of people on the right saying that the left is celebrating his death. The left wants more political violence. the left, caused Charlie to be assassinated. All these insane statements and claims, and they were unfounded. And, they're still going with the narrative that the shooter was, a leftist or a liberal, or he was part of Antifa, or they coined a new term of Trantifa, which I'll get into that too, because Tyler Robinson was seemingly in a relationship with someone who is trans.
Family, country. Now, saying you believe in them or posting anonymously online when you're fired up about an issue, that's one thing. But Charlie Kirk took it to the next level. He was an avid Bible-believing Christian who enjoyed chatting up atheists.
Look, if an atheist wants to fight alongside of us to end abortion or to try and end the massacring of our kids, that's called gender-affirming care, or if an atheist wants to march alongside of us to say no men and female sports, they're more than welcome to be able to do that. But Atheists for Liberty is an interesting phrase because I don't believe...
Even there, he's engaging in transphobic rhetoric, of course, which a lot of Republican Christians will view as valid, right? There's a large chunk of people that will resonate with those statements, but that's being dishonest about how trans kids in the U.S. actually receiving surgery, which is exceedingly rare if it takes place at all. It's only done so to literally help them not commit suicide. And, the men and women's sports, okay. Quick spiel. Here's my, I've really fleshed this out, not necessarily because of this, but in the last 2 weeks, just because of people being transphobic online. If trans women were overtaking women's sports, like if they were 1st through 10th, I would be more open to hearing some hysteria. But just because one singular trans woman gets 3rd place in a sport, okay, get better. Because clearly, if there were that much of a biological advantage, and keep in mind, trans women take trans people take hormone therapy drugs, right? So if you're a trans woman, you've taken drugs to reduce the amount of testosterone in your body. If there were a genuine biological advantage, they would be first every single time, right? So until that happens, until that's the case, I do not want to hear shit about trans women in women's sports. Trans women are women.
You can have liberty without God, because liberty is not man's idea, it is God's idea. That should...
What? Biologically, men are more capable of more muscle mass. Now, that's what I'm saying is trans women, the physical the physical state that a trans woman is in is that of a reduced amount of testosterone due to hormone replacement therapy. So I understand what you're saying, but that's due to testosterone. And so and again, until it's trans women 1st through 10th or 1st through 5th or whatever, if they're overtaking sports, sure, we can talk about it. Until then, genuinely, it's not... It's just something to be hysterical about. It's not a real issue, in my opinion. So, I do understand. Does that decrease potential muscle mass or just muscle mass in general? I mean, sure, if you were swole before, you might keep some of that muscle mass. But here's the thing. They still had to put the work in. Like, I might have a really fast metabolism and a higher level of testosterone in my body, but I still had to go to the gym to get these fucking arms. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not just because they had testosterone at one point. Like, they still had to put the work in as a human being, regardless of their, biological dispositions. And on top of that, they have replaced their testosterone with estrogen. So that's where I'm at on that. I don't know this for sure. I don't study hormones and their effects on muscles that in depth, but I would assume that if you're replacing testosterone in your system, it's going to be harder to upkeep muscle. It may not decrease muscle mass, but again, if you're trans and you have like undergone some level of hormone therapy by the time you're in college, and that's the argument that people are focused on, is like trans women in college sports specifically. You have undergone that process. Just because you worked out before you underwent a transition should not invalidate you from participating in a sport. You know what I mean? At that point, and this might sound, this might sound like I just don't give a shit, but like, it's kind of a skill issue at that point. Like, if you want to be the best, aim to be the best, no matter what. Put the work in, because that individual still had to put work in to exceed at their sport, regardless of their hormones. You know what I mean? So that's where I'm at.
Now, the threats on his personal safety were well known. He knew them, but he wouldn't stop because he believed that.
And I mean, not to minimize what happened to him, nor the threats on his life, but any political figure is going to receive some form of death threats from online fucking crazies. Even people who are completely apolitical but have any ounce of fame will have haters that devolve into people who are obsessed with you, like psychologically obsessed, and that hate you so much that they would call for your death online. This is just a symptom of unregulated access to the internet for people who are young, on top of a lack of guidance around dealing with internal hatred. Again, not to minimize what happened to Charlie, but this is just a growing phenomenon that is seen across the board. So just want to be intentional about that conversation.
Being with people in public, especially on college campuses, talking with conservatives, debating liberals, it made conservatism fun and exciting again. And he died today, taken by an assassin's bullet,
real fun to
doing
talk about.
what God put him on this earth to do. I said it with Brett earlier, and he and I were both crying in our offices and embracing. A lot of people around here are. The word came to me, irreplaceable. He was irreplaceable. And I believe he was murdered, and you heard the governor talk about this at the press conference earlier. He was murdered because he was so effective at what he did. He was a modern-day evangelist. And while so many adults, they can roll their eyes at Gen X or Y or Z, Charlie saw the promise in young people today. His enthusiasm for the future, I found it personal.
And this kind of goes to a point that I wanted to talk about regarding like enabling certain people. Let's say, for instance, Charlie Kirk isn't a white supremacist, but he still made the comments that he made, right? Regarding black people, regarding, if, and there's a conversation to be had about affirmative action, and the way it was carried out. I think a direct quota is kind of dumb. But, and I think I have the video pulled up, and we can talk about it again in a minute. But if Charlie Kirk thought there was an issue with affirmative action, he would have talked about how to correctly implement something like affirmative action, because he realizes that minorities, especially black people, have been underrepresented historically across every field, right? Any job imaginable. So it's important to make sure that we are not discriminating against people based on the color of their skin when we are hiring people for certain jobs. Now, again, I don't think quotas are the right way to go. But that does not mean that people who were hired because of affirmative action don't deserve to be there. His example that he likes to use, and there are multiple different instances of him and others talking about this specific example, but he likes to talk about black pilots and how, I think it was like United Airlines said they were going to increase the percentage of black pilots from 15 to 50%. I can agree that's a little outlandish. I think just trying to hire as many black pilots as you can is just like kind of counter-effective, right? It's counterproductive. But that does not mean that the black pilots that were hired are not worthy of being hired as pilots. Do you know what it takes to get licensed as a pilot? It takes hundreds of hours to reach, thousands actually. It takes over 1,000 hours to get to the commercial pilot status. So to use the affirmative action argument to say that black pilots aren't skilled, motherfucker, what are you talking about? Every pilot that gets hired to an airline is skilled enough to do that because they have flown the amount of hours required to become a commercial pilot. End of story. It doesn't matter if they were hired because of affirmative action or not. So, again, if he were actually mad about specifically affirmative action, he would talk about that and why the quotas are a bad idea. But instead, he attacks black pilots and says, if I see a black pilot in a plane, I'm going to wonder if they deserve to be there, if they are qualified to be there.
All right, let me tell you exactly what I said, okay? So this was in response, first and foremost, to United Airlines saying that half of all their new pilots that they're going to hire are going to be women or people of color. Currently, they're 15%. Okay. So they want to go from 15% to 50%. Mm-hmm. A conversation then ensued about how every time affirmative action is employed, standards have to be lowered. There's not a single instance where that does not occur. So then I said, boy, if I see a black pilot, I'm now going to wonder, is that individual qualified? Were they selected because of their race? Comma, but that's not who I am, but this makes me think this way. And I stand completely by that statement. Okay. Secondly, let me just finish.
Yeah, sorry.
DEI and affirmative action, what it does is it lowers the merit, it lowers the threshold of standards, and increases things that do not matter, such as skin color and ethnic background.
I don't take any joy in saying this, but we sometimes soothe ourselves by pointing out that love, acceptance, warmth, that these are powerful forces. I believe they are. I also believe hate is a powerful force. I believe it's a powerful, powerful unifying force. And I think Charlie Kirk was a hate monger. You know, I really need to say this over and over again. I have a politic that rejects violence, that rejects political violence. I take no joy in the killing of anyone, no matter what they said. But if you ask me what the truth of his life was, you know, and the truth of his public life, I would have to tell you it's hate. I would tell you I'd have to tell you it is the usage of hate and the harnessing of hate towards political ends.
And that is racist. Straight up. Whether he was aware of it or not, and I think he was, but whether he was aware of it or not, that statement can then enable people who are actually racist to then further, entrench themselves in that racism. To look at black people in certain positions and be like, I don't think you're qualified to be here. You're an affirmative action hire. And then that, of course, evolved into DEI and the hysteria surrounding DEI. Oh, you're a DEI hire. I don't trust you. Like, it's stupid. Because the people who are hired through those means, whether it's a quota or whether it's just an equal opportunity job posting, which is actually what DEI does, it makes sure that a job listing is shown to as many people as possible and as many demographics as possible in an equal manner. It is not giving preference to minorities. Okay? It is just making sure that there is an equal opportunity for everyone. That being said, the right has been very hysterical over DEI over the past year and a half. I don't even know. I don't even remember at this point. But, every person hired, whether it's through affirmative action or DEI, still deserves to be there, right? They weren't just picked because of the color of their skin. Even students at universities. This is why Charlie Kirk is prominent in the first place. He wrote an article about how a black woman stole his spot at West Point because of affirmative action. And I can look at the quotas and say, maybe that's true. But to then turn that into a hatred for this black woman and for black people in general, just because of what may or may not have been a stupid quota system. It may not have been. It may have actually been that she deserved to be there over Charlie. That's very likely the case. It's stupid to turn that into hatred. You know what I mean? Students that are accepted into universities, that are looked at even from the perspective of trying to fill a quota, which again I can agree is a little bit ass backwards. Even then, like, say if it's the last two students that you're letting in, like, I just find it very hard to believe that in every single instance it's because of the person's skin color. Like, there's probably another reason why they were picked. You know what I mean? Just because there's more diversity doesn't mean there's less qualifications. The qualifications are the same. They're just being evenly applied across all applicants of all colors, of all walks of life. It's internalized racism being applied to something that isn't necessarily the fault of affirmative action or DEI or whatever. But to go back to what I was saying, his language enables racist people, right? And enabling language, whether it's intended, to be harmless or not, if that enables people to go out and commit acts of violence, then you are in part responsible for that. And this is something that I want to discuss surrounding his death as well. But a very specific instance, this is actually very direct, it's not even indirect, it's very intentional. When George Floyd was murdered, and yes, for any hog hate watchers, yes, he was murdered by Derek Chauvin, who is rightfully in prison. Charlie Kirk went on to slander him, call him, what did he call him? He used a pretty disgusting term. I forget what he said, but he said some very nasty things about George Floyd after he had been essentially lynched in 4K, right? he went on to harass George Floyd's daughter and led people online to follow suit in doing that. So this is now past the unintentional enabling speech into genuine directed racial targeting and bullying and harassment. So all of this to say, whether it's intentional or not, and in Charlie's case, sometimes it was, sometimes it wasn't, his language was enabling to people who had genuine hatred in their hearts for minorities such as black people. And that is not something that I can excuse, and that is part of the reason why I will not mourn him. Let's continue.
It's only infectious. And I believe that no one other than Donald Trump himself in recent memory has had a more profound effect on the political thinking of young Americans than Charlie did. Now, a few months ago,
I mean, she's coming at it from a very pigeonholed perspective of conservatism, but, I mean, it's just ironic to say that. Because, like, I would say more people have been pushed to the left than brought into the right by Donald Trump. Charlie Kirk, maybe he brought more people onto the right, especially young conservatives. I can agree with that. But Donald Trump, bro, are you fucking serious? Like, young people do not fuck with Donald Trump in large quantities. There are not many people who are Gen Z that fuck with Donald Trump. Because most of us realize, first and foremost, he's in them files. So it doesn't matter if you agree with his politics or not. He's a file. You know what I'm saying? So that's a crazy statement.
my son, my 15-year-old son, Nico, was watching something on the computer when we were on a flight. He was supposed to be reading, of course. So I was annoyed at him. I looked over. Then I saw it was a Charlie Kirk video. So, of course, I took a photo of it, and I sent it to Charlie, and he and I got a big kick out of it. And then when my daughter, Maria, heard Charlie was coming to Texas A&M.
Charlie got absolutely destroyed in that surrounded debate, by the way. Destroyed. I mean, people may not think so, but like, that was not... If you viewed that favorably for Charlie, you're never going to change your mind. So, I'll just put it that way.
A&M last spring, she was over the moon. So Charlie brought her and her buddies backstage, and he recorded this video to send it to me.
I found someone here at Texas A&M.
Hi, Mom.
And she's doing very well. She's not making any trouble, and I approve of all of her friends. So things are going great. See you soon.
Those girls who were laughing with Charlie and so many other students across the country, like millions across the globe, are devastated tonight. But Charlie would have loved to know that they're all going to Mass, they're going to church, they're praying in their dorm rooms and their common areas. They're praying for the repose of his soul and for his family now in mourning. The beautiful family. Our hearts break for them tonight above all.
Also something that I want to talk about. Again, whether I disagree with Erica Kirk on everything or not, I heavily disagree with Erica Kirk. She was the same as Charlie as far as her mindset, so I disagree with her fundamentally. But I do have a bit of empathy for her as a now widow of someone who was lost to gun violence. There is empathy there. There is not empathy for her as a person, but rather what happened to her and her family and his two kids as well. They will grow up without a father, and that's sad. That is devastating. That's not a reality that anyone should have to live with. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Else. Now, while so many across the political divide, and I can be
from my big dog. What I've come to realize is a bunch of adults, the generation above ours, especially middle class and some lower class, don't keep up with the news anymore. I literally asked someone a few days ago what he thought about Trump being on the files, and he straight up had no idea what I was talking about, and I had to explain to him the whole situation with Epstein. And my brother, you've arrived at one of my most infuriating issues, something that I'm the most pressed about, is that less than a third of this country votes. Less than a third of this country is even politically active to begin with. There are so many people here who don't know shit and don't give a shit. And it is so frustrating. And that's part of what I want to, like, inspire, is, like, reaching to people who have never even thought about politics in their life. You have to be in a place of some privilege in order to be apolitical. Being apolitical is a privilege, and I don't believe it's a privilege that anyone should practice. I have that privilege, yet I don't practice it. And not to say that I'm, like, this perfect example or anything, but, like, just because I'm not affected directly by politics, which we'll see how that goes in the next few months, but anyways, just because I'm not directly affected by politics because I'm a white man, that doesn't mean that I shouldn't care about politics and how it affects other people, because ultimately I'm a part of the same society that other people are in, and if something affects them in a negative way, I should be concerned about it, right? And that's why I'm so politically inclined. But that is a frustration I have. That's a big frustration I have, and that's something that I want to change. Is that so many people just don't know, don't care, they don't have to care, and that's probably a generational thing. And I think that, and you know, love my parents, love all the Gen X parents that I know, but Gen X has a big part to play in that, because they are the apolitical generation. Their generation was not very... And, of course, there were political activists within their generation. It's not to say they didn't exist. But that's where a lot of the apoliticism comes from, is a generational handoff from Gen X to millennials to Gen Z. Now, with the internet, Gen Z has been radicalized a bit, but there's still a lot of apathy that has to be undone. They unintentionally screwed us. Yeah, they really did. By not giving a shit, they kind of screwed us a bit, because they allowed a couple days. Like, if something had been done in the wake of Ronald Reagan on any of the things that he fucked up in this country, whether that be like straight up wealth inequality, or whether that be like furthering the financial oppression on black communities by putting drugs in the hood and making gangs, you know, more violent, and turn on each other. Because, for clarity, gangs were started in order to protect black communities because the police wouldn't protect black communities. The racist white police officers didn't give a shit if black people were killed. So that's why they started gangs, was to protect each other. And then Ronald Reagan came in, introduced drugs, introduced like territorial conflict, and you know, and also decreasing the amount of money that was in ghettos to begin with, and making gangs more violent towards each other because they felt as though they had to fight each other for resources, when ultimately those resources were just being taken away from them. But yeah, if anything had been done in the wake of Ronald Reagan, I think we'd be in a much better spot, but nothing's been done for the last fucking 35, 40 years. So here we are, brother. Anyways, that's my spiel on apoliticism. It pisses me off.
Prone to pessimism too, you know, could be pessimists. Charlie decided, no, I prefer optimism.
Jesus is honestly the most important thing. We are seeing Gen Z go back to church in record numbers. We are seeing a Christian revival that should give everyone in this audience hope. It's the greatest news happening in America.
Lamar Jackson, bro? Who's that? Is that who that was?
America, right? Christian revival that should give everyone.
Why the fuck they got Lamar Jackson?
It's the greatest news happening in America right now.
I can only imagine what he was
saying. He loved
saying.
talking about where things were going, and he saw it because he was there.
Is that a yarmulke? Bro, see, and he's an Israeli shill, so like, fuck him. He's also a big Israel dick rider. That's another reason I really don't fuck with him.
He felt it. He engaged with it. There's simply no one else like him. I can't believe I'm saying it was past tense. I mean, how can...
Okay, I agree with that. I was in the same spot. I was like I was talking to my girl. I was talking to my fiance about just different things, because like we both knew who he was. We both knew what he was about. And we're just talking about some of the things he had said, and I came upon this moment where I said Charlie Kirk is, and then I had to take a second. I was like, wait, hey, like it wasn't even sunk in that he was killed. It was just, again, it was just a crazy. I think it probably took me like a good week to really like understand and grasp the fact that he had been killed. And then, you know, of course, dealing with all the rhetoric surrounding his death. Did you not see the video of him calling out Israel and people saying he was starting to defect and that's who was killed? Yes. I don't believe that he was anti-Zionist. And that's the part that matters. He said that Palestine isn't real. He said that if they didn't want Gaza to be flattened, he made a joke about how there are no more tall buildings in Gaza. And he said if Palestine, or if Gazans is the term that people use to avoid saying Palestinians. If the Gazans didn't want Gaza to be destroyed, they shouldn't have killed the Jews on October 7th. And he said those stupid Muslims. I think his Islamophobia outweighed any doubts he had about Israel. I think his only doubts about Israel were their involvement in American politics, which completely valid. They have their entire penis up the asshole of American politics. That's a very valid concern. Am I entertaining the notion that Mossad did this? Am I going to say they did it? Fuck no. Fuck no. I'm going to wait for more information. But, yeah, this situation seems a little suspicious. I still think he was a Christian Zionist. I don't think he backed away from that position at all. I think it was solely Israel's involvement in American politics that he had an issue with, which is the position of a lot of people on the right. Even if they are pro-Israel, they aren't pro-Israel, you know, putting money into American politics. So I don't think he was anti-Zionist. So
How can this be? He was on air with us just 48 hours ago. And he and I were just texting yesterday about his conference in December that I was going to.
The sign behind him, confirming Kavanaugh would be indefensible. So true, man. I wonder what he had to say about Brett Kavanaugh, the Supreme Court Justice, who is also a fucking sex pest. I believe Netanyahu himself offered Turning Point about $150 million to go more pro-Israel, and propaganda was about Israel more, but he rejected the money. I do understand that, and again, I'm not ruling it out. I'm not at all ruling it out. Mossad, please don't kill me. But I see what you're saying, and I'm not backing away from that conspiracy. It's one that I'm not ruling out. Hey, fuck you, bro. Asshole, bro said I got a big head. Anyways, no, I think that he was still pro-Israel in his advocacy at the end of the day, just not in the way that Netanyahu wanted him to be. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it was just more of a, he wasn't pro-genocide enough. He wasn't anti-Hamas enough. You know what I mean? But that's just the Zionist propaganda trying to enter his asshole. You know what I'm saying? And that could have been the reason, but we don't know. We just don't know. We don't know enough. So, I have spent so long talking just on this one video.
Welcome to the News Hour. One of the nation's most prominent conservative activists is dead after being shot during a political rally at a Utah college campus this afternoon. In a social media post, President Donald Trump announced Charlie Kirk, the head of the conservative youth organization Turning Point USA, died after being rushed to the hospital from an outdoor event at Utah Valley University. In the post, the president praised Kirk, saying, quote, "No one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States of America better than Charlie." In the last decade, Kirk has grown as an influential political figure online and in organizing events on college campuses for conservative causes. Elisa Desjardins has more on the shooting.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. Email us as always.
Charlie Kirk was a MAGA superstar, a millennial hosting a daily and highly influential radio show on more than 200 stations that reached across generations.
Okay. That's Steve Bannon, who is fucking insane, bro. Yeah, he was involved in January 6th. I think he was also heavily involved in getting Trump elected the first time around. So he's a big MAGA guy, but he was at January 6th and refused to cooperate with officials even after he was subpoenaed, which put him in jail for a couple months. But he is involved with some of the more conspiratorial and bigoted rhetoric of MAGA, just for context.
That's a lot of people, Utah. Video today showed Kirk speaking at his Utah event, the first in what he called the American Comeback Tour. As Kirk hosted a segment where he took audience pushback, a shot echoed.
Oh my God. Go, run.
Crowd events were a staple for Kirk. He regularly toured college campuses and was the founder of Turning Point USA, one of the largest conservative student and youth groups in recent years.
The side that believes in freedom of speech is the side that I believe is on the right side of history. Yeah. Has there been an instance, guys, where a liberal has had an open mic on campus where conservative kids can ask questions and you guys feel?
Yes, there has. And also, this is ironic because a certain administration that aligned with Charlie Kirk politically is now going after free speech. It's just quite ironic. MAGA is always are the punchline to their own jokes. It's really funny.
Respected.
Billed as the next Rush Limbaugh, this spring,
this guy's shaking his head just because he doesn't fucking know.
Claimed Kirk had the #1 conservative podcast in the country and #2 in all of news. He drew listeners for his unapologetic style, proclaiming people should say outrageous things. And indeed, his words, like these on guns, could be controversial.
I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights.
Bro, if we were to take that to the logical conclusion of what he just said, using the Second Amendment to defend our other God-given rights, if people that don't look like Charlie Kirk were to do that, people who are getting oppressed, let's say for instance, right? Let's say for instance, we're in Texas, right? We're in Houston. We're at a fucking, I don't know. We're at a construction site, and there's some construction workers there that are on green cards, and they are able to work. They pay taxes. They're just not full citizens yet, and somewhere down the line of the ICE leadership, someone decides we're gonna round these guys up. They're on green cards. They're working. We don't know if they're drug dealers or not. We don't know if they're Nicaragua terrorists or not. Some bullshit. And they decide to arrest them. Of course, the real reasoning behind ICE arresting mass amounts of Hispanic people is ethnic cleansing, but that's a conversation for another day. Let's say they do that, right? In proper ICE fashion. They pull up And let me see if I can find some good pictures to corroborate what I'm saying. Let's say this group of guys right here were to pull up on you. And let's say we're in Texas. This is a concealed carry state. And your employer, knowing that, you're in an open air construction site, and sometimes construction sites, I don't know, I'm not going to speculate. Let's just say your employer doesn't really give a shit if you, as long as you are licensed, practice your right to concealed carry in Texas. And you are on the job, you're a construction worker. And let's say this group of people right here, they roll up on you and they say, hey, you're under arrest. Get in the vehicle right now. You're under arrest. A bunch of masked men refusing to identify themselves and pointing guns at you, telling you to get in a van. Let's say one of these construction workers decides to practice their Second Amendment right and pulls their gun out and shoots. And this has happened, by the way. Not specifically the scenario I'm painting, but this has happened in multiple different ways. Charlie Kirk and people like Charlie Kirk would most likely be furious about the ICE agent being killed, right? But that's the Second Amendment. If a group of masked men run up on you and tell you to get in a van at gunpoint, and you have access to a gun, what are you going to do? Are you going to listen to them and get in the van, God knowing what's going to happen to you? Or are you going to fight? Are you going to fight for your life? I'm just open-ended question. Please answer in the comments in chat. Republicans wouldn't like that. They would not like that. They don't actually give a shit about the Second Amendment. They give a shit about guns, which are not the same thing. The right to bear arms is for a very specific purpose, and that is to defend oneself, one's sovereignty, and self-defense, right? Just on the basis of self-defense. If you were to practice self-defense against a gang of masked goons running up on you with rifles, someone with an adrenaline rush might choose to shoot, okay? And that's self-defense. Now, I'm not condoning killing ICE officers. I'm also not condoning ICE. Fuck ICE. But that's the logical conclusion of what Charlie said. So, just providing some context to something that's, I really don't think he
Kirk was married
would
with two
be
small
okay
children.
with that.
He was 31 years old. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Lisa Desjardins.
A university spokesperson said a suspect in the shooting was initially taken into custody, but police soon determined that person was not actually the shooter. Political leaders on the left and right have expressed their shock over Kirk's murder and condolences for his family. Now,
that's another reason why people think it's a conspiracy, is because this old man who's a nut job and who also literally he was actually put under arrest for child porn after the fact. So it was really fucking weird that he literally told the cops he had child porn on his phone, or child sexual assault materials rather, on his phone, after he was arrested, because right after Charlie Kirk was shot, he was in the crowd and he yelled, "And I'd do it again," and was understandably arrested, right? Because, you don't say that. A normal person wouldn't fucking say that after somebody gets shot. You know what I'm saying? So he was rightfully arrested. And then he told the cops he had child sexual assault materials on his phone. Kind of weird. It's almost like he was about to get found out anyways, and so he was made into a distraction. I don't know. The conspiracies aside, That's who he was talking about. There was another person that they thought was the shooter, like actually just by appearance, but it wasn't.
House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries said political violence is completely incompatible with American values. Republican Senator Ted Cruz called it an act of unspeakable evil. For more on Kirk and his influence on the political right, we're joined now by Dave Weigel, who covers politics for Semaphore.
Okay.
Thank you for being here.
I got to piss.
The kind of event that Charlie Kirk hosted in Utah with hundreds, potentially thousands of college students coming to listen to him, that was not at all uncommon.
Not at all. The format is important. The format is going to be remembered because Kirk did not pioneer, but he sort of perfected this idea of a conservative speaker going on campus and not just being in an auditorium with a guest list, going to the widest possible space, having his people film it, having everyone else film it, and debating students. Ideally, having somebody in the crowd say something silly that goes viral. But he took it very seriously. This is a man who he left college to start this organization, was a very self-taught in a lot of philosophy, a lot of religion, a lot of history, very confident in his beliefs, his Christian beliefs, and thought he was making converts. He was making converts. The organization grew massively every single year he ran it.
And he was no outside influencer. I mean, he was personally close to President Trump. They would go back and forth on issues, I'm told. When Charlie thought that things were important to the base, he would tell President Trump there was this idea that he had his finger on the pulse of the MAGA movement more so than did some Trump advisors.
He did. They influenced each other. Kirk started this organization when he was a teenager, and it was much more Tea Party focused on the debt. The debt is a threat to future generations. Did not love Trump at first in 2016, but Don Jr. loved his attitude. The Trump family and the Trump organization elevated Kirk. Kirk elevated Trump, and the image that Donald Trump has with young people has improved over the years. Lots of people are going to take credit for that, but part of that was Kirk aggressively organizing on campuses, in the media, and not just the media that we're on, but on phones. He was one of the most popular figures when people were looking at debate on their phones, scrolling through. I want to see a video of something interesting. I want to see an interesting debate. He was open with what kind of guests he had. That was his theory, which Trump really adopted in 2024. That comes from what a lot of Kirk was doing. Go anywhere, talk to anybody, make a convert from somebody who might think they hate conservatives.
And how did he influence the GOP's posture toward culture war issues, especially on college campuses?
Yeah, he said a few of those clips, but think of the time he was coming up in. On college campuses, this is one of the most advantageous of our time. There have been restrictions on what you can say about various identity groups, sexual identity groups, minorities, etc. The conservative position has been no, complete free speech, you're not allowed to do that. So he had these traditional conservative views, and he framed them as somebody coming in from outside to say, you are being misled, your minds are being shrunk by what is happening on your campus, you should have an open mind. And he would think, if you talk to me long enough, you're going to agree with me. But in terms of the culture wars, very aggressive on transgender rights, but on the entire kind of left-wing critical theory that had grown up over the last 40 years. He was very comfortable debating that, and in the last 9 months, obviously with Trump in power, winning on that. A lot of these
And I think this can kind of speak to why he rose to prominence a bit. Not necessarily because he had his finger on the pulse or whatever, but more so because of the things he was willing to say that the establishment saw that they could use. He famously got his start. That article that I spoke about, him writing about how a black woman took his spot at West Point, was published on a far-right outlet called Breitbart. And Charlie gained some prominence from that, and he then moved forward to essentially... He formed Turning Point USA with he had a benefactor by the name of Foster Friess, who was a billionaire. And if we know anything about billionaires and funding that comes from billionaires into the media, you can't really trust that shit. Even if the mouthpiece for it is completely earnest. And so the point that I'm trying to make here is that Charlie was just another pawn in the culture war. The culture war that is being used to divide the working class in America. And so whether he was earnest in his words or not, which I think he was, I do think he was a white supremacist who believed everything that he said, especially towards the end of his career. He was still just a pawn. Just like any other media outlet.
ideas are informing how the Trump administration and there are people in it who work for Turning Point USA at some point in their careers, how they view the left, which is don't apologize, endless combat. There's some of Trump in there, but Trump was never as comfortable in conservatism as Kirk was.
And how does his work compare with earlier conservative youth movements like Young Americans for Freedom or anything that we saw during the Reagan era?
Right, well, it was modeled on some of that, but the times had changed. And William F. Buckley in the 1950s and 60s, for example, did not have to say so much about how it was good to get married. It was good to go to church. It was good to have children. Kirk saw part of his role as combating change in the culture. And a lot of this is feminism, is things that have been very mainstream in American politics for quite a while, and saying, no, they're actually making your life worse. And he had different ways of coming at that. Some were more combative, some were more welcoming. But that was what changed. And he came into the conservative movement at a time where marriages were falling, people were having children later, pop culture had changed the way it covers these issues, these life facts, and that was part of it. There's a lot of influencers in this space. The manosphere, you can even call him. He took some of that and moved it into politics, saying, look, I shouldn't just vote Republican because you want a tax cut. You should vote Republican because look how happy your life is going to be with this family compared to how you'll be angry and left-wing and finding enemies online.
And his brand of activism.
Which, to that point, that's just confirming that to be left-wing and to be angry at people online, like, I'm taking some liberty here to explain this further, but to be a true leftist is to understand the dynamics that the world operates under instead of just how it seems from my perspective. It's to understand that at the end of the day, all the problems that we face as humans are not due to one group or another, unless we're talking about class, right? Because there is always a class of people that want to stay in power, right? The ruling class wants to stay the ruling class. And more people can join that class, but at the end of the day, it's very exclusive, and they want to keep the working class down. How do you do that? You divide and conquer. And that has been done successfully over the past 40 years, but especially the last, 15, 20 years. It has taken root, and it has really grown into quite an issue, quite a divide in this country. They have successfully divided us. So it's really hard to come back together right now. But again, less than a third of America even votes. So we have plenty of people that we can talk to. But that's just my perspective on actually being a leftist. Not to be confused with them goddamn liberals. Liberals, dude.
In many ways fit within the broader trend toward politics as performance.
Oh, it completely did. Just the popular. We talked about other conservatives in the past. William F. Buckley was a big cultural figure and had his weekly show. But Kirk, like I was saying, was in people's phones all the time. He wrote his way, talked his way into the halls of power, had the influence of the president of the United States, first time and more so this time. Trump who had mastered media in his own way, has elevated these figures and had an understanding that a lot of people who didn't used to vote, didn't take politics very seriously, can come into politics through culture, through commentary. So Turning Point USA again was growing, and Turning Point Action, the political arm, growing every year. But a lot of what it was doing was saying, all right, you're interested in our content because of this debate we had on campus, this viral video we had, this documentary we had, this reporter who was at a protest. Here's how you can get involved and help Donald Trump get elected. Very successful in 2024. And I saw some of this up close, finding people who never would have cared about politics 10, 20 years ago, but they did care. They had some issue that got them interested, and Turning Point Action was getting them information on their ballots to turn out. So this is an operation. You've seen this from people in the White House already saying people will carry on his legacy. That's some of the legacy that's going to be carried on, is this combination of constant contact and attention and political action.
Well, our thoughts are certainly with his family. Dave Weigel, thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Charlie Kirk assassinated. The president breaking the news. The great and even legendary Charlie Kirk is dead. No one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States of America better than Charlie. He was loved and admired by all, especially me, and now he is no longer with us. Melania and my sympathies go out to his beautiful wife, Erica, and family. Charlie, we love you. Charlie was loved by all of us. He had a beautiful family, married the love of his life, Erica, just 4 years ago. 2 children, son and a daughter. And he touched generations of Americans. But he was taken from us. You've probably seen the video. Charlie was holding a Turning Point USA event at Utah Valley University. He was on his Prove Me Wrong tour, where he takes questions from students and engages in...
Bro, y'all can't even get the name of the fucking tour right. It's the American Comeback Tour, bro. Come on.
friendly debate.
Do you know how many transgender Americans have been mass shooters over the last 10 years?
Too many.
Also, I fucking hate that he says that here, and people are like, oh yeah, you really got him. Too many trans people have been mass shooters recently. Too many people have been mass shooters recently. It's not a fucking trans issue, bro. These people are fucking animals, dude.
Okay, now 5 is a lot, right? I'm gonna give you some credit. Do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years?
Counting.
Too many would have been a better answer right there. Too many mass shooters. Period.
You're not counting gang violence.
Counting or not counting gang violence. So he wants to tack on something that plagues the black community, specifically within hoods. I mean, we'll never know where he wanted to go with that, but it's so frustrating. Like, even in his last breath, he was trying to otherize black people and say, oh, well, I mean, if you want to talk about gang violence as mass shooters, and there are conversations to be had about gang violence, but that conversation needs to include why gang violence happens in the first place. And no, it's not because they're black. I'm just going to let you know right now. It's because they have been kept in poverty and forced to make money by other than legal means through gang operations. And then those gang operations get violent with each other over territory and over, different ways that they make money. Has nothing to do with them being black. And you can include them in mass shootings. Absolutely. However, it is a separate issue because it's more so guerrilla warfare, if anything. No, I'm not being racist when I say that. It's a different word. Look it up. Than an adventurist and or a extremist going out and shooting people just to shoot people. Because gang violence is not that. It's not shooting people just to shoot people. It's shooting people because of rising tensions, because of territory disputes, because of, even if it's like, bad-mouthing somebody. It's not the same as like being radicalized into killing people at random, especially at a place like a school or a church or a school chapel in the case of the Annunciation Church shooter. Just to make that distinction.
A second later, he was shot in the neck in the middle of the quad, sitting underneath a banner that said...
Not even. It was like as soon as he put the mic down after he said not counting or not counting gang violence. Put the mic down, and then he got shot. And it was fucking crazy. Again, this is like that. That's what I saw. That is the first thing I saw regarding this incident. Is a TikTok of him saying that and putting the mic down, and then and it was an uncensored video. I just see fucking blood going everywhere, and he's like slumped over, and I'm like, dude, that looks really fucking bad.
We know one round was fired, and reportedly from 200 yards away, just 50 yards more than Butler, from a nearby campus building. One man was taken into custody, but police later determined he was not the gunman. But we do have good news. The actual person of interest has been apprehended. That's according to FBI Director Kash Patel. They're being interrogated.
So, the first time Kash Patel said that they got the guy, they did not have the guy. Because he tweeted it out. He was like, oh, we got the guy. And then he deleted the tweet. And media outlets had to be like, oh, he didn't get the guy. And it was like another day, I believe. It was another 24 hours until they actually found Tyler Robinson. It was really fucking stupid. And just goes to show how incompetent Kash Patel is.
The governor of Utah says the killer will pay the ultimate price.
I want to make it crystal clear right now to whoever did this, we will find you. We will try you. And we will hold you accountable to the furthest extent of the law. And I just want to remind people that we still have the death penalty here in the state of Utah.
Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Because this is a sentiment that is shared by a lot of people on the right when they first found out about this. They wanted to put this kid to death. They wanted to put whoever it was to death. Of course, they were fantasizing and hallucinating that it was some extreme leftist fucking Antifa like operative, which if you know anything about what Antifa means, you know that assassinations are not Antifa. It's in the name, anti-fascist. They were so headstrong on wanting to put this person under capital punishment, and I think they still are. But the rhetoric was toned down when they found out the kid was a Republican, and he grew up in a MAGA household, and he was, a Mormon from Utah. Nancy Mace specifically, and I'll put it in the video, but when she found out, she said, capital punishment for whoever the killer is. And then later when Tyler Robinson was revealed to be the perpetrator, she was like, Charlie would want us to pray for this young man. Let's pray that he finds Jesus. And it's like, she wasn't the only one, but it's just like, y'all are so two-faced. Like, y'all don't stand on anything. Y'all don't stand on shit. Y'all just want to, like, when they thought it was a fucking leftist, they were like, yeah, we're gonna put him to death. They're just bloodthirsty.
And we're actually just hearing now that they have released the suspect who they thought was the killer.
Yeah, it was that fast. I forgot how fucking fast that was. It was like 3 minutes after he tweeted out, Kash Patel tweeted out that they found the guy. He deleted that shit, and everybody was like, oh, actually, they released him. Never mind. They did not get the guy.
Police say they'd used surveillance video from the campus that showed the suspect wearing all black running away from the scene. Before Charlie was shot, students actually noticed a guy walking on the roof. And the FBI tells Primetime they're aware of this tape that shows someone crawling across the roof before Charlie was shot.
Getting right up.
Yeah. You think he'd already be in place?
You would think that. So there's somebody on the roof right there? Just saying?
Huh.
He just ran from over, where's my finger? Well, from over there, ran in. And now he's right there. Just saying.
After the round was fired,
Now, I think that is Tyler Robinson. For any of the conspiracy theorists in the chat or watching on YouTube, I do believe that in that video that is Tyler Robinson. The conspiracy that I've seen a lot is the second shooter theory. I mean, there's just not any video evidence, but I wouldn't rule it out. I really wouldn't. Especially until I don't know if they're going to release his autopsy, but I would, in order to quell conspiracy theories, I would expect authorities to release his autopsy. Especially because of the bizarre case of the bullet getting stuck in his neck. Like the fucking big ass 30-06 round that supposedly got stuck in his neck. And people were speculating that it maybe bounced off his body armor. He wasn't wearing body armor. Like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't really make sense. Like, they retrieved the bullet from his neck, yet it was a round big enough to blow a fucking foot-wide hole in the other side of anything that it hit. So, it doesn't make sense. But I'm not going to lean into conspiracy theories too much in this video.
Another camera captured another person running across the roof in the distance. Charlie immediately lost a lot of blood after the bullet hit his neck and was rushed to the hospital and then was pronounced dead. Immediately afterwards, Matthew Dowd on MSNBC said it was probably a fan who didn't know how to handle his gun.
We don't know any full details of this. We don't know if this was a supporter shooting their gun off in celebration, or so we have no idea.
Oh, and then it got worse.
You can just watch the video and know that's not what happened, because there wasn't even like when the shot went off, there was no one cheering or like any, like, that's so stupid. What
MSNBC said Charlie deserved to die.
He's been one of the most divisive, especially divisive younger figures in this, who is constantly sort of pushing this sort of hate speech. You can't stop with these sort of awful thoughts you have and then saying these awful words and not expect awful actions to take place.
MSNBC's already apologized.
Now, I understand how this can be offensive. I understand how this can be inflammatory to some people. But, however, the concept of blowback cannot be ignored here. Negative repercussions affecting a country whose government has undertaken a usually clandestine intelligence operation in another country. Now, of course, this is talking about like a operation that backfires and causes, like, I don't know, a terrorist attack. Think 9/11 or October 7th. These are some of the more prominent incidences of blowback, right? You have destabilization efforts and military operations in a region that inspire a lot of hatred for America. And the blowback for that is a terrorist attack on the World Trade Center. Not to condone it. Obviously, terror attacks in any form are despicable. But that is not to absolve the United States of any responsibility. And same goes for Israel. Their decades of apartheid on the Palestinian people. And I mean, blowback has taken place multiple times throughout history from Palestinian activists. Whether it be terror attacks or whether it be like peaceful yet like acts of civil unrest. There have been many instances where Palestinians have blown back, if you will. And so, in a country where violence is only being fed, and when people like Charlie Kirk are allowed to just say whatever racist thing they want without any repercussion in the moment, they don't have any actual challenge to their ideologies. And I can get into why I think this specifically struck with Tyler Robinson in a minute. I do want to talk about that, but people will be angry with you, and there's a non-0% chance that one of the people who's angry with you is also somebody who has been radicalized to the point of committing an act of extreme violence in this manner. Again, not to condone the blowback, but it is blowback. It is a result of lots of pressure and lots of tension built up because of certain actions. So, again, it may sound very callous. I'm not saying that Charlie Kirk deserved to die. I'm not saying he deserved to be assassinated. But, I mean, you have to take this into account. You have to understand the context surrounding what happened. I can speak from experience from shooting a 30-06. I'll blow through bone and keep going, potentially even mortally wounding a second target. A second target? Bro, what the fuck? Yeah, I saw a video, like, there was a, oh, actually, I kind of want to find it. Okay. Oh, okay. Yo! Like, And look, I'm sorry if this is making people like think about what the video actually was, but like obviously this is a direct shot, but like even then, like the damage is instantaneous, and it causes almost an explosion on the exit wound. And it should have an exit wound, right? It's a bit strange that the bullet was fucking stuck in his neck, bro. Like, there would be a big chunk missing from his neck. Like, it doesn't make sense, bro. I don't know. I said I wasn't going to lean into the conspiracy. I apologize. Just a lot of things don't add up.
Like that who make it easier to get murdered. Charlie wasn't president. He wasn't even a politician.
He was
a young political...
Okay. He was a politician. Turning Point USA started as... It was essentially like corporate lobbying, but for student bodies, right? So it was very involved in student politics. And then with Trump's campaign last year, it was very involved in literally the biggest election in the country. So, yes. Not to say that he deserved political assassination, that's not what I'm trying to say. But Charlie Kirk was definitely a politician.
Star defending American freedoms, especially the freedom of speech. And if guys like Charlie are targets for assassination, we all are. Charlie Kirk's just...
If you're saying that Charlie's beliefs were the reason he got assassinated, and then you say, if Charlie was assassinated, we all can be assassinated, what does that tell you about the people that are now worried that they will be targeted for their own beliefs? Again, not to say that they should be. No one should be killed for their own beliefs. I think people should just learn, right? We need to teach people the truth and not propaganda. But like, if that's your fear, take a look inside, dog. Like, you've got some... And I'm not saying that you had to, I'm talking about the people that agreed with him on, like, everything, not the people that agreed with him on, like, maybe some fiscal policies or some shit. You know what I mean? Like, if you really think that you're a target like that, not that you deserve it, but your beliefs are probably more extreme than you realize.
It's like you and me. We speak our minds. We speak from the heart. We tell the truth because we believe in the country and everything.
Okay, to say you tell the truth on Fox fucking News, are you sucking my nuts from the back? What the fuck are you talking about, bro? Fox News is the biggest institution of lies in the fucking world, bro. In the world. Like, you can literally take anything Fox News and then invert it. Like, the opposite is most likely true. That's how much they fucking lie. Like, and I'm not even, like, I'm barely speaking in hyperbole here when I say that.
Thing that it was founded on. Charlie had the spirit of our founders, full of energy, passion, conviction, and an unrelenting pursuit of happiness. Charlie was always happy. You never saw the guy down. He loved what he did.
I wouldn't say he was always happy. I think he was also very angry at times.
And he never stopped working and fighting and pushing and persuading. Charlie Kirk grew up in the Chicago suburbs. Great athlete, good family. Dropped out of college to join the Tea Party and start a movement. He set up systems to watch professors and stop their indoctrination.
Okay, that was actually a doxing operation, if I'm not mistaken. It was literally just going after professors who were like liberals, not even leftists, but like liberals. Which, honestly, I can see the frustration with. Liberals are insufferable at times. And they are the reason that the Republican Party is so strong. Like, liberal Democrats, politicians, are the reason the Republicans have been able to get away with so much bullshit this year. But also over the last few decades. for certain. I can see being frustrated with the liberals, but to make a list of names and addresses of people that you fucking disagree with, brother, that's political violence. If we're being 100 right now, that's political violence. It's just you can't condemn Charlie Kirk being killed in a political assassination while at the same time be like, yeah, he made it very easy to access people he disagreed with. Brother, he made a fucking watch list. Like, that's depraved.
Then he built up chapters across the country on campuses and launched Turning Point USA, creating the largest and best organized political mission for young Americans ever.
Because of billionaire donors. Keep that in mind.
His events were like concerts. The biggest stars on the right twice a year. We all had a blast. He left it all out in the field for Trump in 2024 and turned out the vote on the ground in the swing states. He had one of the highest rated podcasts in the country and was in constant contact with the president, J.D. Vance, helping push policy, execute an agenda, and communicate ideas. And he was able to raise
terrible choice of words.
Millions and millions of dollars because people believed in Charlie. He was charming and earnest and never took a day off and was trusted by everybody who knew him. No one ever said a bad word about Charlie Kirk. Every time he did a hit on my show, he'd text me afterwards saying, "Thanks, Jess, for having me on. Really appreciate it." My 13-year-old daughter loves him. Grandparents love him. Charlie wasn't offensive at all. He wasn't trying to be provocative. He was a gentleman. He just...
Okay. This goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like, sure, he wasn't trying to be provocative, but he was. He definitely was provocative. He was inflammatory at that. And to say he wasn't offensive just shows how little you fucking know. Like, if you can't even recognize how it might be offensive to somebody, even if you disagree that it is, like, to say straight up that he's not offensive at all is just ignorant bullshit. That motherfucker looks like a pig, bro. I'm sorry, I'm getting... Ugh. I genuinely... Fox personalities get on the last of my goddamn nerves, bro.
Asked questions, enjoyed debates, just like America's greatest leaders always have.
He intentionally tried to provoke substance out of you, and you said, well, I'm worried about some laws Congress should pass. I have to ask, what laws are you talking about?
Because what's happening at the Democrat Party is this very sinister combination. It's a party of censorship, it's a party of war, a party of open borders.
Okay. Open borders conversation can be tabled. Party of censorship is being outclassed by the Trump administration. And to say that they're the party of war? Are we fucking serious? Like, sure, you've got some hawks in there. I know Chuck Schumer would love to nuke Iran. I know that. But to say that they're the party of war? Brother. What are we talking about? Like, under this administration, we have seen the renaming of the Department of War, with Trump and Pete Hegseth saying, we no longer are defensive, we need to go on the offensive. And I don't care how many times Trump fucking lies about it, he hasn't stopped any fucking wars, bro. And he loves to drum up these new conflicts that he supposedly stopped, and it's like, bro, Ukraine is still getting shit on. Palestinians are still getting genocided. What the fuck are you talking about, man? Like, he has started more war than he has stopped. It's just insane. Fucking party of war my ass, bro.
that is against actual traditional liberal values. Everyone in the audience is the first generation in American history to have it be worse off than your parents.
I'm not policing your language. I'm just saying I would say black
Fair
people.
enough, but the insinuation is that I'm being racist. But that's fine. I agree. So then why are we so...
If he's up in arms about that, bro, the insinuation is that I'm being racist. Okay, are you being racist? If you're going to say that and not address whether or not you're being racist or not, kind of makes it sound racist.
fixated on the language of Trump and not on the actions of our current leaders.
Bro, Trump's language incited a fucking insurrection. It literally got people killed. They were gonna hang Mike Pence, bro. What are you... Trump's language is probably the most inflammatory in the entire nation, bar actual neo-Nazis, like open neo-Nazis, not closeted ones like Trump is. Like, it... What are we doing, bro? Like, your words matter, especially as the President of the United States. Like, Trump's words matter. He incited an insurrection. That is a fact. I don't care who the fuck wants to argue with me about why January 6th was legal or valid or whatever the fuck. He incited an insurrection, and somebody got killed. Not to, like... Look, I think Ashley Babbitt was a dumb fuck, but she didn't have to die. But she stormed that Capitol, and she was trying to attack a fucking police officer inside the Capitol. And I think that even in that instance, like the gun, like the gun went off unintentionally and shot her in the face. To say that Trump's words are not as important as the actions of another president is stupid. Because his words, after he was voted out, caused permanent harm. And then the Democrats did fucking nothing about it. Like, look, we can shit on Biden all day, but don't cover up for Trump. It's so stupid. Like, I hate Joe Biden. I would love to talk about why Joe Biden's a terrible president. But Trump is worse. So don't cover his ass by saying, oh, his words don't matter. His words got people killed. Shut the fuck up.
They killed Charlie for asking questions.
No.
What kind of message does that send?
No.
Don't ask questions. It's too dangerous. Charlie?
Okay. I'm not listening to this guy anymore.
On video in a plain maroon t-shirt in AM on September 10th, in which he is observed on video in a plain maroon t-shirt, light-colored shorts, a black hat with a white logo, and light-colored shoes. When encountered in person by investigators in Washington County on September 12th, in the early morning hours, Robinson was observed in consistent clothing with those surveillance images. Investigators interviewed a family member of Robinson who stated that Robinson had become more political in recent years. The family member referenced a recent incident in which Robinson came to dinner prior to September 10th, and in the conversation with another family member, Robinson mentioned Charlie Kirk was coming to UVU. They talked about why they didn't like him and the viewpoints that he had. The family member also stated Kirk was full of hate.
Notice how they didn't mention what those viewpoints were. They didn't mention why Tyler Robinson didn't like Charlie Kirk. Because here's the thing. If Tyler Robinson was actually a leftist extremist, and he said that he didn't like Charlie Kirk for, all the things that our leftists would have a problem with Charlie Kirk for, like he's a white supremacist, he's racist, he's sexist, he's queer-phobic, like, and all of those are valid reasons to not like Charlie Kirk. But if that was the reason that Tyler Robinson assassinated Charlie Kirk, we would know that. Because Fox News would be blasting it everywhere. This guy would have said that just now in this press conference. He would have said that. He would have said Tyler Robinson had ideological issues with Charlie on every level. including this, and this, and this, right? But that's not what he said. They didn't want to say why. And we'll get into it, but he was largely apolitical. He grew up in MAGA, Utah as a Mormon. And he grew up around guns, right? He used his grandfather's gun to assassinate Charlie Kirk. And he was in a relationship with a trans individual. Now, if you're a crazed MAGA nut, you might hear me say that and be like, oh, well, that's proof enough. He was a goddamn, one of them goddamn liberals. He was having relations with a trans, one of them trans folks. Like, okay. You want to tell me that no Republican ever has had any relation with trans people or any attraction to trans people or queer people in general, for that matter? Reports claim that tens of thousands of people attended the memorial for controversial podcaster, with high-level MAGA politicians and other public figures flying in from across the country to attend. Republicans were quick to try to pin Kirk's killings on trans people and trans ideology before a suspect was even in custody, and Kirk himself had made plenty of negative remarks about the LGBTQ+ community during his life. In completely unrelated news, there were over 168 reports of Grindr outages on Sunday evening, a staggering increase from the baseline number of 2. A heat map showed a large concentration of those problems taking place in the Glendale area. The outages have continued through Monday morning, at one point reaching over 200 reports. Glendale is where Charlie Kirk's memorial was held. Now, I'm not saying this to make fun of these people and say, oh, look at them, they're gay as fuck. No, what I'm saying is, they are gay as fuck, and they like to have gay sex. They are closeted, yet gay. And they're all MAGA. All of them. This has happened multiple times. And Grindr is one of the many examples that we can use. But this is just a clear indicator, right? You do not have to be a far left, Antifa, whatever the fuck they want to say, to have feelings for a trans person. You can be an apolitical, Republican-raised gun enthusiast and still have a relationship with a trans person. Just because you're in the closet doesn't mean that those feelings don't exist. And that's the same with all these people. Like, I doubt any of these people, maybe some of them are openly gay, but I doubt all of these people are openly homosexual. It just goes to show that, like, even if you want to point at, like, oh, he was in a relationship with a trans person, like, the trans ideology made him do this, it wasn't because of trans ideology, but rather maybe because Charlie was very transphobic. Particularly making a comment about how trans people are an abomination to God. And for a Mormon kid who believes in God, that is also in a relationship with a trans person, you can see why he might have taken the action that he did. It's a lot more simple than, he was infected by trans mind virus. He's part of Trantifa. Like, this was a solo event of somebody that, had a grievance with Charlie Kirk and decided to take it out and he took it into his own hands. And that's it.
And spreading hate. The family member also confirmed Robinson had a gray Dodge Challenger. Investigators identified an individual as the roommate of Robinson. Investigators interviewed that roommate, who stated that his roommate, referring to Robinson, made a joke on Discord. Investigators asked if he would show them the messages on Discord. He opened it and showed several messages to investigators and allowed investigators to take photos of the screen as each message was shown by Robinson's roommate. These photos consisted of various messages, including content of messages between the phone contact named Tyler with an emoji icon and Robinson's roommate's device. The content of these messages
included messages affiliated with the contact Tyler, stating a need to retrieve a rifle from a drop point, leaving the rifle in a bush, messages related to visually watching the area where a rifle was left,
and immediately tried to frame him as trans or, part of trans ideology or Trantifa or whatever the fuck.
Authorities, he is not cooperating, but all the people around him are cooperating. We can confirm that his roommate was indeed a boyfriend who is transitioning from male to female, and that he is cooperating with authorities.
He's like, this person was transitioning male to female, and then proceeded to call him or call her he, right? I know some people may not think that's a big deal, but it's just furthering, anti-trans rhetoric. Let trans people live how they want to live. They're not hurting you. They're really not. And any trans person that does commit an act of violence, it's not because they're trans. It's because they live in America. Let's leave trans people alone. They ain't doing shit. They're trying to figure their own shit out. They have their own, they literally have gender dysphoria to figure out. Let them do that in peace. Let them identify however the fuck they want to identify. Who cares?
We are going to go to that press conference we've been awaiting. FBI, White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy, Homeland Security Advisor to the President, Stephen Miller. So I can sum up the Democrats this way, and we'll culminate this with the Mariachi Band. They lied for 4 years about the border being closed and secure. They never picked up a phone and called any of the family members that we know of. We know Biden and Harris and Mayorkas didn't. We know the Democrats wouldn't stand at a joint session speech of President Trump for Laken Riley or Jocelyn Nungary's family. And
understandable, it's fucking Donald Trump.
They're the party of Abrego Garcia and Mariachi bands.
That's just racist, bro. You're gonna say that the party of Abrego Garcia. This is a man who is being unjustly deported from America. What? Okay. And then mariachi bands? Didn't even say it right. You can't even say fucking mariachi. They're the party of mariachi bands. Is the insinuation that that's a bad thing because it's Hispanic? Brother, get a grip.
What should now happen to these mayors and these governors?
God, dude. I might get put in prison for this one day, but god damn, he's fucking ugly. He is the embodiment of thumb build. He's got Trump neck and he's 35.
The Democrat Party is an extremist organization, Sean. It's not a political party in any normal sense of the word. A political party represents Americans. It represents law-abiding citizens. All you see all day long are crazy Democrats screeching on TV on behalf of foreign terrorists, hardened criminals, and violent illegal aliens. A political party exclusively dedicated to protecting terrorists, criminals, gangbangers, and murderers.
Need I say more? It's just furthering the rhetoric that's been pushed for the last 9 months, but, he's insinuating that every immigrant is illegal, every immigrant is violent, every illegal immigrant is, here, to do crime and kill people and deal drugs, and it's bullshit. Because for one, they're not even rounding up illegal immigrants. They're rounding up any immigrant at this point. But on top of that, to deport someone who is here illegally is counterproductive to a proper society. A proper society would see that person and say, hey, you're not here legally. Let's change that. Let's fix that. Let's get you here legally, right? We're going to get you the proper documentation. We're going to make sure that you're paying taxes and that, you're part of society. You're not just freeloading off the system, which they can't do. If you're here illegally, you can't do that anyways. But that you let them contribute to society. Immigrants are great for the economy. They are amazing for the economy. And these people can't fucking wrap their tiny little brains around that. They're smooth fucking heads. And they know it. Like, at the end of the day, they don't care about whether or not immigrants are illegal, whether or not immigrants are actually committing crimes. That's just a permission structure to get every immigrant out. That's what they're doing, is kidnapping innocent people off the street. They're kidnapping people out of court processions who are actively trying to follow the letter of the law to be here legally and disappearing them. There are people, like I said earlier, still missing from Alligator Alcatraz. I think it's over 2/3 of the people that were there. I think there needs to be some sort of punishment. Then there should just be some work release and probation until it's over. Something deportation is kind of extreme, but if someone's making a home living there here illegally, we need a better process for that. And honest, I think is what you meant. Making an honest living, but living here illegally, we need a better process for that. I do agree. I think that, like, it's intentionally, like, it's arbitrarily hard to immigrate here, right? It either takes a lot of time, unnecessary time, or a lot of money. Like, if you're really rich, you can just immigrate here immediately. I don't think putting them in jail is the correct option. Respectfully, I do disagree with that notion. I think that, if they have been working and making money here and not paying taxes, I think that there should be a repayment in order, a fine on top of it, maybe, if you will, proportional to how much money they've made, right? Pay the taxes that you owed, and then maybe a fine on top of that. Like, make sure you're not going to keep doing that, and then go through the process of helping someone become a legal citizen. But on top of that, illegal immigrants still pay taxes. I don't know if you know this, but illegal immigrants can still get a tax identification number from the IRS to pay taxes, even if they're not here. Even if they're not here fully legally. Like, there are a lot of gray areas that you can come here and that are now considered fully illegal, right? But they can still pay taxes. So it's like, even then, it's like not a cut and dry, like, oh, none of them are paying taxes, they're all just leeching off of our economy. They're not. So yeah, the process is so fucking ass backwards. That's why I said if there needs to be punishment, they don't necessarily need to go to jail. Oh, I guess I think I misread that. Some sort of punishment. Yeah, not jail time. I agree. Yeah, I misread that. That's my bad. In the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination, there were vigils that were held all across the country, actually, and especially across the South. But they were filled to the brim with white supremacists, which just goes to show Charlie Kirk's advocacy again. That was a large part of its target audience, was white supremacists. One such vigil had people chanting, and this was in Provo, Utah. So yeah, have capitalized on the assassination of far-right commentator Charlie Kirk to entice new recruits with promises of vengeance and racist camaraderie. These so-called active clubs are a loose collective of neo-Nazi mixed martial arts groups that gather at local gyms and parks to train, tapping into existing gangs of white nationalists or adjacent organizations. Global authorities view them as perhaps one of the most organized and pernicious domestic terrorism threats emanating from far-right political ideologies. This is because the establishment doesn't give a shit about neo-Nazis. They do not give a shit, especially the Republicans. One of these groups at one of these vigils was recorded chanting, and they were chanting, "White man, fight back."
White man, fight back! White man, fight back! White man, fight back! White man, fight back! White man, fight back!
Which is ironic because it was a white man that killed Charlie Kirk. There's no fighting back. Like, it's a white people problem. If it's any race, it's white people. Which, like I said earlier, it's not one race. It's Americans as a whole. But if you were to tag it on one race, it would be white people. There was a large spike in white supremacist sentiment when Charlie Kirk was assassinated, mainly due to the rhetoric surrounding his death in the media, saying that it was a leftist, saying that it was a Trantifa. whatever the fuck. And it led to a lot more white supremacy in the country. And with that, multiple threats, bomb threats to HBCUs were sent out. At least 6 from what this says.
Cities across the country are currently under lockdown after a slew of threats that were called in today. Moments ago, Spelman College announcing a shelter in place over the threats, including at Clark Atlanta University, which is near their campus.
Other HBCUs receiving threats today: Hampton University, Virginia State University, Alabama University, Bethune-Cookman University, and Southern University. The schools urging students to remain vigilant, saying these lockdowns will be in place until further notice. NBC News correspondent Stephen Romo is following the latest for us. It seems, Stephen, like we're getting even more campuses that are closing down just upon hearing what the other campuses are choosing to do.
That's true. And to be honest, it's been hard to keep up because we just keep getting new information from new campuses that are shutting down because of concern or because they've received direct threats from this. You mentioned we had Southern University as well. That's in Baton Rouge. Bethune-Cookman, which is in Daytona Beach. And interesting, Spelman University has that shelter-in-place order, but it's actually not received any specific threats. They said that the close proximity to Clark Atlanta University has made them, out of an abundance of caution, decide to issue a shelter-in-place just because of how close they are. They have said they're also increasing security just in case. We have statements from the other universities you mentioned as well. Virginia State University, Alabama University, Hampton University, and Hampton, Virginia. All of these statements so far seem pretty similar. They're saying they have received a threat directly to campus, and they are either asking people to stay off campus or issuing a lockdown order, a shelter-in-place order, so people stay where they are. There is a lot of concern here. Of course, the Charlie Kirk shooting happened on a college campus. We had the Colorado shooting at a high school yesterday as well. The heightened sense of tension is palpable in these students I've seen online replying to this. There's a very real fear. Having lockdowns on campus and these types of threats is not unheard of. It's pretty common. But all of these happening today, specifically at HBCUs, is causing a lot of concern.
Yeah, on top of it being 9/11 as well. It's really a dark day today. Stephen Romo, we appreciate it. Thank you so much.
This was in the wake of all these white supremacists feeling emboldened by this, vengeance quest for Charlie Kirk, right? And as a result of this, Trey Reed was a black student at Delta State, and Corey Zucatis was white. Young black men do not hang themselves. And I say this because Trey Reed's death has been ruled, as of right now, a suicide. I don't care what the authorities say because, like I said, young black men do not hang themselves. Black people do not hang themselves, especially not from a fucking tree. Like if there was a specific method of killing someone that has been enacted on people that look like you historically because of the way you look, and then if you want to kill yourself, right, you're not going to do it in that manner. Because why would you make it so hard to figure out whether or not you killed yourself or if you were lynched? That black men don't hang themselves. They don't. Yet, time after time, it's ruled a suicide. This was a lynching in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination because of rhetoric that emboldened and enabled white supremacists to do this. And there was another, I could not find the article, which just goes to show how suppressed it is. Even Trey Reed's story is not anywhere near mainstream media. It's only in fucking these random ass articles. But there was another student that I read in Idaho that got lynched, who was hanging from a tree. It's infuriating because it's like this was this is directly because of the rhetoric from right-wing politicians, while they're also simultaneously trying to say that the left is violent, the left is politically violent. It hurts my soul, man. It hurts my fucking soul. Like, this guy was not even... I'm older than him. And he got hung from a tree because of the way he looked and because people felt emboldened to do so by this piece of shit right here. And what people... The people that agreed with him said that, oh, it's the left's fault. Oh, it's their fault. It's us versus them. And of course, Charlie Kirk, having so much white supremacist rhetoric throughout his entire career, of course he's going to embolden these people. And they're still trying to cover it up as if it's a suicide. Like, there is no justice in this country. And it's in Mississippi. Like, what the what are we lying for? I mean, that's probably why they're lying, is because they're cops in Mississippi. But nonetheless, like, it's so infuriating, man. And, like, again, the bomb threats, like, black people had nothing to do with this. Like, I know it's not a race issue, but it definitely wasn't black people that had anything to do with it. You know what I'm saying? And black people are still getting lynched because of Charlie Kirk's advocacy. And people are still like, oh, he's not a white supremacist. Oh, no, he was just a conservative. He just had, certain beliefs. It's just infuriating, man. Hassan was scheduled to debate Charlie on the 15th. So actually a week ago today, last Monday. And he also reacted live. He was in the middle of his stream when Charlie got assassinated. He reacted to it live and was just very distraught at the level that violence has reached in this country. Because this is somebody who is his peer. And so this is... I think he explains it in this segment, but it's very easy to see himself in that same position. And so this is just a very powerful testimony, but also, like the title says, he's honest about Charlie's rhetoric.
Now, you were live streaming when Charlie Kirk was killed. Can you describe that, and also what your immediate thoughts were about what the consequences would be?
I was live streaming, covering the day's news as I do every day. And at first I didn't believe it, and then we immediately started scouring the internet to find if there was any footage from the incident, because I knew that there would be people filming. And we found some, and then there was, complete confirmation after I saw a close-up incident shot. Oh my God, I can't believe I just saw that. Oh my God. And obviously I was horrified. And watching that unfold to someone that you were supposed to sit next to publicly in a public setting only in a couple weeks, it made it even more real. Someone that I knew, someone that I was not exactly friends with, but a counterpart on the ideologically opposite side.
As you're watching that, you've got a lot of people live commenting. How do you manage what they say?
Yeah, I mean, we are very desensitized to violence, I think, in general. So there are always going to be people that especially under the guise of anonymity online, people to just say things without really thinking about it, being careless. And I wanted to stamp that out immediately. First, because I feel like it reflects poorly on them, it reflects poorly on everyone involved, but also because I think that instantly I knew that this was going to be something that the administration will use against those that they've declared political dissidents. And unfortunately, my fears were realized shortly after when Donald Trump came out, only a couple hours after announcing Charlie Kirk's untimely demise, and make a statement about how they were basically going to start prosecuting and persecuting political dissidents, the left. as he said.
Since then, we've had J.D. Vance, other senior
That's
figures
something
in
I
the
haven't gotten to
administration
yet,
say that they're going to go after what they call
yeah.
terror networks, who they say are
It
behind
was
this.
within hours. Trump was like, "Oh, we're coming after the left on this one. Like it's the left's fault. They're violent, and we're coming after them with the full force of the law, whatever."
What are you expecting?
Complete
or
bullshit.
What do you fear from them?
I don't know. I don't know what that political prosecution is going to look like, considering that we have a First Amendment in the American Constitution that actually makes the government attempts at doing things like that wholly unconstitutional. So I don't know. It's not like this administration is shy about eroding constitutional protections or going after people's civil liberties. So who knows where they might take it? I just hope that the broad American appetite for anger and vengeance will be soothed by how fast they get distracted elsewhere.
Is it actually safe to be in the public sphere right now?
I mean, I have a policy of not letting fear dictate my life, and I'm going to continue abiding by that policy because, like I said, time and time again, this is an unfortunate but all too common side effect of this field that I'm in. And I don't just do rallies, political rallies. I don't just do public events where I go out and speak or even debate people. I also go to protests, protests where I get shot at by the American police. So I'm no stranger to putting myself in harm's way. And it's unfortunately something that I have to do in order to do my job properly. So I'm most likely going to continue. I'm just waiting out this initial period of unrest and anger and resentment and taking extra precautions. But I will probably go back to business as usual, hopefully when the temperature is lowered a little bit.
Charlie Kirk's language included offensive statements.
For some context, what he just said is extremely courageous. And I know, any Hasanabi haters who are somehow this far into the video or still in the stream or whatever, you can suck my dick, but you can say I'm glazing him, whatever. This man receives probably one of the highest numbers of death threats to a private civilian in all of America. From every corner of the political spectrum, there are people that fucking hate Hassan. And it's usually because he's right. So for him to say that, he will eventually go back to business as usual and that he has a policy to not let fear dictate his advocacy. I mean, I feel like a bitch for being scared. Because I'm scared. I am. I'm terrified of what the coming years are going to look like for people who are using their voices to speak out against this administration. I have a fear that within the next few years, I could get disappeared. Who knows, man? I could get put in a concentration camp. And that scares the fuck out of me. But I gotta follow Big Bro here. He's right. We can't let fear guide us. Otherwise, we lose. And the fascists win. I just gotta keep pushing, bro.
About Muslims, about black and brown people, about immigrants, about transgender people. Since his death, he's been praised for his openness to debate. What do you think about that praise from people like Ezra Klein from the New York Times, who said he was doing politics the right way?
I think it's dishonest, simply put. And it's not necessarily because Charlie Kirk wasn't open to platforming people which he disagreed with. I myself am one of those people. So technically it's not incorrect to say that he is willing to debate people. But to state that he was doing politics the right way without actually reflecting on his political output, I think is dishonest. The medium itself obviously was utilized for cutting propaganda for the Trump administration. But also, what I found to be distasteful was the lack of quotes or the lack of recognition for Charlie Kirk's ideology. It makes it seem as though the New York Times is outright endorsing Charlie Kirk's opinions and ideology by
Same with
omitting it,
CNN.
because it leaves the readers
Same
who
with
may not be aware of
MSNBC.
Charlie Kirk's worldview with a totally different outlook on Charlie Kirk's political advocacy. One that the New York Times is either subscribed to, or one that liberals, prominent liberals like Ezra Klein, seemingly don't care enough about to even mention.
But for you, those extreme statements didn't make you want to stop doing public debates with him?
I think it's not a matter of what things people say, but more so from my perspective at least. And everyone has a different attitude about platforming, but from my perspective, it's more so a matter of how much political influence this person wields. So for Charlie Kirk, I mean, he was the regime's guy. He had a lot of influence, both over the Trump administration and a lot of influence over a lot of young conservatives in this country that were a part of his massive advocacy network, Turning Point USA. So in that regard, it's not necessarily debating someone whose ideas are beyond the pale, but instead it's more so about trying to stop the bleeding in terms of like letting these kinds of dangerous ideas spread without any sort of contention, without any sort of pushback whatsoever. Once a person gets to a level of notoriety and a level of legitimacy, it's impossible to avoid them. I think closing your eyes and plugging your ears and just hoping they go away simply is not going to work. So at that point, I think it's valid, no matter how strange or horrifying or dehumanizing their rhetoric might be.
You've written about meeting with him a few years ago, saying he was much more genial than you expected. What did you learn about him that day?
He was he was very professional, he was very cordial, and he wasn't shy about trying to develop a personal relationship with even someone like myself. But I didn't really entertain that because I did find his opinions, which were much more moderate at the time, back in 2017, as opposed to what it became by 2020 and onward. But even then, I did not understand the productivity of hanging out in a cordial manner with someone who I opposed so vehemently because of their worldview. Having said that, reflecting on our private correspondence at the time, I realized, like I'm telling you right now, his opinions definitely changed quite a bit. I recall a time where he was talking about writing a piece potentially on how he found it morally repugnant to compare Black Lives Matter to the KKK. And what's interesting about that is today's Charlie Kirk and today's media environment in this incredibly divisive landscape. When I say that, you would assume that maybe he was actually highlighting the KKK as a good thing and BLM as a bad thing. But at the time, he actually was saying, look, I have disagreements with Black Lives Matter, but the Ku Klux Klan is an entirely separate organization that is just totally and utterly morally repugnant. And I think that was interesting for me to find out, because I had forgotten about this conversation, but it was interesting for me to find out and really reconsider how much the American right has shifted on a lot of issues.
Can you explain why Charlie Kirk resonated so much with Generation Z?
Just TikTok. I think TikTok was fearful of a ban,
Generation Z.
and they recognized that if they give Trump something, that if they give Trump more access, or if they give him or his main guy, Charlie Kirk, an algorithm boost, which TikTok seemingly did do, and this is Trump's own statements on TikTok, that they would probably get a stay of execution, which they did. And I think the reason why he had a lot of staying power with Gen Z was, as opposed to how little influence the organization Turning Point USA had prior to Charlie Kirk's TikTok initiatives, was both because of the algorithmic boost that they most likely got, or they were in front of a lot more people, like real eyeballs that they were getting, real attention they were getting from a fairly young platform, and also the structural issues that my generation and the generation after mine have been experiencing. And the Democrats at the time and their inability to address these structural issues with reasonable legislation created a lot of anger. The very same type of anger that led Donald Trump to win in 2016 was still there. And it was not addressed by the administration at the time. So people looked for that exact same alternative that would be destructive. It would be a destructive force to these institutions that very clearly were not helping people mitigate the affordability crisis that they were experiencing. Very clearly not helping people buy houses. A lot of people in Gen Z, I think, recognize that they're never going to retire at a reasonable age, that they're never going to be able to own a home, and that hopelessness and that anger was palpable. That's the reason, I think, why they chose to take a shot in the dark in the direction of a dangerous and unstable and incompetent fascist like Donald Trump. So it wasn't all Charlie Kirk. It was more so environmental factors that played a big role in this. And the reason why I say that is because the Gen Z opinion on Donald Trump swung dramatically back in the opposite direction because they very quickly realized that Donald Trump is also not invested in fixing any of these problems that he was tasked with solving.
I want to ask you about your own rhetoric. I noticed that Elon Musk has been posting about you.
Yes.
And I don't know the context of these particular statements, but here's a quote from you about landlords who don't want to rent out their properties. You said, kill them, murder them, let the streets soak in their red capitalist blood. Doesn't that make you part of the problem with violent discourse?
This was in a conversation that I was having with a landlord friend of mine, and it's of course hyperbolic, and it's not meant to be sincere. This is not sincere advocacy. It's not a real policy that I would ever advocate for, and that's precisely the reason why when Republicans were desperately looking for any sort of incisive language that they could present, they went back to a very obvious instance of LARPing, an insincere statement that is obviously hyperbolic from, I believe, 2018.
My question stands nonetheless. Doesn't that kind of language contribute to the atmosphere of violent, even lethal violence in the United States?
I don't believe that my insincere statements that don't reflect on any of my beliefs whatsoever in 2019 has led to any sort of real world violence whatsoever.
Just talking about what people are being exposed to online, Australia's about to introduce a social media ban for people under the age of 16. Given the violent discourse that we're discussing, could that be a solution?
I don't think so. I don't know if a walled garden approach would perhaps be a little bit better and a little bit more productive in terms of dealing with the early stages of the journey that people go through online. I'm certainly not opposed to something like that. But as far as an outright ban of social media, I'm not so certain that this would be appropriate or productive, because I feel like sheltering the youth from a way to communicate with one another and a way to learn what's going on around the world is probably not the best idea either.
Hassan Piker, thank you very much indeed for talking to us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's very dishonest the way in which the media has eulogized him. Not to say that he deserved what happened, but rather, being honest about who he was and how his words impacted people's lives. And now, even in his death, his words have gotten people killed. And more people, even more people threatened with death. I haven't pulled it up here, but I'll put it in my video. There was a guy, I think it was in Arizona, I could be wrong, but he threatened to shoot up a gay bar because of, the left, because of Trantifa killing Charlie Kirk. And it just goes to show the kind of people that he enabled with his speech. Again, back to what I said literally 2 hours ago at this point. Like, it doesn't matter whether he is a genuine racist or just really fucking ignorant. I do think he is the former, but it doesn't matter. The words that he used enable actually racist people to further their racism and act upon it in violent manners. Now,
this began on Monday with Kimmel's late-night monologue on the political reaction to the shooter charged with the murder of conservative activist Charlie Kirk.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
So those comments...
Which is so true. He's not saying that it's one of them. He's saying that the Republicans tried to constantly frame Tyler Robinson as a leftist, as trans, right? They tried to point the finger instead of saying, this is horrific, we need to do something about gun violence. They said, no, we need to do something about them. He's right. He is 100% correct. And to comprehend that is not that fucking hard. But seemingly, I mean, I've wasted hours, maybe like a few hours, arguing with people about what Jimmy Kimmel said, which is true. I mean, regardless of Tyler Robinson's position, like, that's what Republicans did. That's what Fox News did. It doesn't matter what his actual stance was. They tried to say, he's not one of us. He's one of them. And we need to go after them. That's what they did. And that's what they're continuing to do. This is where we've arrived at. This was today. Trump has now designated Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization. This is the result of what the right has done with Charlie Kirk's death. They've completely politicized it, and they're going after, they started by going after free speech.
There's free speech, and then there's hate speech. And there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie, in our society. We will absolutely target you, go after you, if you are targeting anyone with hate speech, anything. And that's across the aisle.
And there are multiple people on the right who actually got mad at her for that because, right-wingers love their hate speech. But the hate speech they're talking about in particular is people talking bad about Charlie Kirk.
The fallout from Charlie Kirk's killing has spread to the workplace. People are getting fired for comments that seem to celebrate or glorify the assassination of the MAGA activist and father of 2 young children. These companies and organizations have reported either terminating or suspending employees for posts about Kirk, and that includes Middle Tennessee State University firing a worker they say had, quote, zero empathy for Kirk's death. Conservative activists, Republican lawmakers, and even a doxing website are flagging the comments in what critics say is a campaign to punish those posters.
Right. There was a doxing operation that took place within the days after Charlie was assassinated of people just being honest about his advocacy and saying, I don't feel bad about it being Charlie Kirk. Do I like political violence? No. Do I want people to get killed by gun violence? No. Do I care that Charlie Kirk specifically is no longer with us? there's not much empathy to be had there. And people have been getting fired over it, doxxed, actively doxxed. The website, I went to the website before it got taken down. And I actually went there to see if I was on it. I won't lie. But they had people's names and addresses on this website. It was taken down. Obviously, doxing in that manner. Doxing in general is illegal, but especially in that manner is like easily like taken down. Like that you're not gonna get away with that. But the silencing of any, and it's not even like hateful about Charlie Kirk. It's just like, here's what he said. I don't know. I guess I'll just play that clip. Essentially, there was a clip that he had watched prior to this. I'll see if I can find it, but it was Sheila Jackson Lee stating that she got her start in politics due to affirmative action. Now, to contextualize this, this is not her saying, and this goes back to what I said earlier about affirmative action, right? Even if the quotas are stupid, even if it's like not the right way to go about, you know, making sure you are equal in your hiring process, her saying she got her start due to affirmative action is not disqualifying of her as a politician. That has not, like, you don't, if you can't understand that, you're racist. It's like I said earlier, if a pilot was hired and he's a black pilot that is probably, it may have been part of like a quota or whatever, he still has the hours in order to be a commercial pilot. So he is just as qualified as anyone else that could have gotten hired, right? Same goes for Sheila Jackson Lee. Now, I'm not super familiar with her political career, but seeing as she is an older politician, a career politician, her statement tracks. She said, I got my start because of affirmative action. Affirmative action gave me an opportunity as a black woman to become a successful politician. And I did. I now have a successful career as a black female politician. That's what she was saying. Not, oh, I'm only here because of an affirmative action quota. But what Charlie did is he took that and he ran with it. Right? Here's what he said.
And Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously. Play cut 52.
But I rise today as a clear recipient of affirmative action, and particularly in higher education. I may have been admitted on affirmative action, both in terms of being a woman and a woman of color. But I can declare that I did not graduate on affirmative action. This is my personal story.
See? He can't even fucking listen. He can't even listen. She said it right there. She may have been admitted on affirmative action, which, again, you still have to be qualified enough to be admitted to a university in the first place for that to take effect, right? But she did not graduate off of affirmative action. She graduated because she put the fucking work in and got the degree. So, all this racist bullshit about, oh, we know, like, you don't have the brain processing power. And he said the racist part out loud. Like, you had to go and steal a white person's spot. That's white supremacist as fuck. It's not a white person's spot. It's anybody's spot. It's not a white person's spot. This is a diverse country. It's anybody's spot. Anybody's game. CNN doesn't want to fucking talk about that. None of these outlets want to fucking talk about that. Because they're scared or they don't give a fuck. Right? She was fired from the Washington Post for not posting her own opinions on Charlie Kirk, but rather his own quotes. And she was fired for this. Clear breach of the First Amendment, right? Because it wasn't even for her own words. It was for using Charlie's words to contextualize his career. And somebody down the line didn't like that. Last week, the Washington Post fired me. The reason? Speaking out against political violence, racial double standards, and America's apathy towards guns. 11 years ago, I joined the Washington Post opinions department with the simple goal to use journalism in service of people. I believed in using the pen to remember the forgotten, question power, shine light in darkness, and defend democracy. Early in my career, late Washington Post editorial page editor Fred Hyatt told me that opinion journalism is not just about writing the world as it is, but as it should be. He told me we should use our platform to do good. That has been my North Star every day. As a founding global opinions editor, I created a space for courageous, diverse voices from around the world, especially those exiled for speaking the truth. I was inspired by their bravery. When my writer, global opinions columnist Jamal Khashoggi was brutally murdered by Saudi Arabia regime agents for his words, I fought loudly for justice for years, putting my life and safety on the line to pursue accountability and defend global press freedom. For this work, I was honored with global recognition, prestigious awards, and proximity to the world's most powerful people. Fucking Jeff Bezos. As a columnist, I use my voice to defend freedom and democracy, challenge power, and reflect on culture and politics with honesty and conviction. Now, I am the one being silenced for doing my job. On Blue Sky, in the aftermath of the horrific shootings in Utah and Colorado, I condemned America's acceptance of political violence and criticized its ritualized responses. The hollow, cliched calls for thoughts and prayers, and "this is not who we are," that normalize gun violence and absolve white perpetrators especially, while nothing is done to curb the deaths. I express sadness and fear for America. I wish I had hope for gun control and that I could believe political violence has no place in this country, but we live in a country that accepts white children being massacred by gun violence. Not just accepts, but worships violence. Now, I see what you're saying here. In a country that lets its white children die, that means we don't give a fuck about the violence. Because, it's one thing for, the establishment to see, brown children in Palestine getting bombed. They don't give a fuck about them. But that is far below their importance level for white children in America. And they don't even give a fuck about them getting killed by gun violence. So that really shows you how low how little they care about gun violence. We will also do nothing to curb the availability of the guns used to carry out said violence. The denial and empty rhetoric has learned helplessness, because the truth is, America is sick and there's no cure in sight. Because America, especially white America, is not going to do what it needs to do to get rid of the guns in their country. It will be thoughts and prayers, violence has no place, out of a performance of goodness, not out of the resolve to convince their communities to disarm. My most widely shared thread was not even about activist Charlie Kirk, who was horribly murdered, but about the political assassinations of Minnesota lawmaker Melissa Hortman, her husband, and her dog. I pointed to the familiar pattern of America shrugging off gun deaths and giving compassion for white men who commit and espouse political violence. This cycle has been documented for years. Is that a link? Nothing I said was new or false or disparaging. It is descriptive and supported by data. For everyone saying political violence has no place in this country, remember, 2 Democratic legislators were shot in Minnesota just this year, and America shrugged and moved on. That they fucking did. And I didn't see a goddamn person posting about them. But everybody wanted to post about Charlie fucking Kirk. Everybody. Part of what keeps America so violent is the insistence that people perform care, empty goodness, and absolution for white men who espouse hatred and violence. Again, I don't care for empty rhetoric. I did my journalistic duty, reminding people that despite President Trump's partisan rushes to judgment, no suspect or motive had been identified in the killing of Charlie Kirk, exercising restraint even as I condemned hatred and violence. My journalistic and moral values for balance compelled me to condemn violence and murder without engaging in excessive false mourning for a man who routinely attacked black women as a group, put academics in danger by putting them on watch lists, claiming falsely that black people were better off in the era of Jim Crow, said that the Civil Rights Act was a mistake, and favorably reviewed a book that called liberals unhumans, In a since-deleted post, a user accused me of supporting violence and fascism. I made clear that not performing over-the-top grief for white men who espouse violence was not the same as endorsing violence against them. Bro, that's so fucking bar. My only direct reference to Kirk was one post, his own words on record. Black women do not have the brain processing power to be taken seriously. You have to go steal a white person's spot. Charlie Kirk. That's the clip we just watched. And I don't care if you want to say, oh, it's not about black women. Oh, it's not. He was talking about those women specifically, and they all happen to be black women. And he said they had to go steal a white person's slot. So I don't give a fuck what you have to say. He was being racist as fuck. Shut the fuck up, man. My commentary received thoughtful engagement across platform support and virtually no public backlash. And yet, the post accused my Measured Blue Sky post of being unacceptable, gross misconduct, and of endangering the physical safety of colleagues. What? Charges without evidence, which I reject completely as false. They rushed to fire me without even a conversation, claiming disparagement on race. This was not only a hasty overreach, but a violation of the very standards of journalistic fairness and rigor the post claims to uphold. Since then, my words on absolution for white male violence have proven prescient. This suspect in Kirk's killing is indeed a young white man, and already lawmakers are urging us to pray for him. The media is painting the 22-year-old as a good all-American suburban white kid. The cycle I mentioned has once again come to pass. I was the last remaining black full-time opinion columnist in the Post in one of the nation's most diverse regions. Washington, D.C. no longer has a paper that reflects the people it serves. What happened to me is part of a broader purge of black voices from academia, business, government, and media. A historical pattern as dangerous as it is shameful and tragic. I am proud of my 11 years at the Post. Beyond awards and recognition, the greatest honor has been working with brilliant colleagues and connecting with readers and writers around the world. To all of you who have supported me, read me, even those who disagreed with me, I say thank you. You've made me a better writer, thinker, and person. But this is not the end of my work. I still believe in the power of my pen. My values have not changed. Freedom from censorship, especially on talking about race, is why I launched the Resistance Studies series, beginning with my independent online course, Race, Media, and International Affairs 101. That sounds really interesting. I created this course after Columbia's School of International and Public Affairs cut funding for my race and media class. That's crazy. Oh, it's Columbia. I don't know why I'm surprised. This summer, we sold out all 500 spots and funded more than 40 scholarships. For those who wish to support me, please do sign up to join the fall session of Race, Media, and International Affairs 101 and 102, a series of lectures and conversations with prominent guest speakers before the September 19th registration deadline. Damn, I missed it. The first classes begin October 6th. This will likely be the last cohort I will teach until mid-2026, so don't miss a chance. Okay, yeah, that's it. I've been canceled by Columbia. I've now been canceled by Washington Post. Institutions may cancel me, but my pen and my teaching will not be silenced. If anything, my voice will be sharper now. Forward ever, backward never. As always, we move. Karen. Amen. Nothing else said. This is what Charlie's legacy is. Silencing black voices and snuffing out black lives. And overall, leaving the nation off worse than when he, before the American Comeback Tour. There's no more free speech. I mean, we'll see how that plays out. Like I said, I might end up in a concentration camp. Who knows? But we got to stay strong. We got to stay united. Solidarity and knowledge are our best weapons. If you're watching this on YouTube, I appreciate you watching to the end. Like and subscribe on the channel. Stay safe. Knowledge is power. Keep learning. Keep sharpening your mind. Your mind is your best weapon. Remember that. We don't fight fascists with guns. We fight them with our minds because they're not very smart. Okay? They're not. So keep that in mind. Knowledge is power.